Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard series. And today we're going to be talking about the V-BT04 Shadow Paladin deck from the Vilus Deleters set. So, yeah, we're going to be getting right into that here. A couple things before we start. Number one, repping One Punch Man today. Oh, pie. You already know what I'm saying. But that brings up my second channel. If you guys are interested in anime or manga or video games, or you just love your boy, go check out my second channel. Links down in the description below. Would really appreciate if you guys support that. And then check out our sponsor, Dabbers. Dabbers Cards and Games is a local card shop in Georgia. They have a lot of cool merchandise and products from Japan and other places. And they have video game tournaments, Cardfight tournaments, I think Dragon Ball Super tournaments, and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. So definitely go check them out if you're in town. Or if you're not in town, check out their link down in the description below so that you can buy some merchandise from their site as well at competitive prices. But let's get right into the Future Fight for today. We're going to be talking about, like I said, the V-BT04 Shadow Paladin deck from Vilus Deleters. So we're loading that right up here. I guess I kind of should start with saying that I don't really like this deck. I know that I'm like a Shadow Paladin main, and I've played Shadow Paladin for a lot of years, like pretty much since it came out. And this is kind of like, it has like Phantom Blaster in it, and like original cards like Gust Blaster, etc. But I don't really like the way that this deck like interacts with other decks, and the way that it interacts with itself. Like, I feel like it's sacrificing too much on its own behalf, and not taking enough from our opponent. Like, whenever I fight a Shadow Paladin deck that is from this set, I've never really felt fear. As Vegeta would say, does a machine as yourself ever experience fear? Like, no, I don't when I fight Shadow Paladin. So Shadow Paladin Center has never really been my thing, but I'm still doing a future fight for you guys, of course, for a build that I think is pretty solid. So let's get right into it. So we have 4 Gust Blaster Dragon, one of the grade 3s that I was just mentioning. This is actually a new card from the set of VR. So it's 2 Vanguard skills. We'll go over them right here. So the first one is when it attacks. So something to be noted is it says when it attacks, so you can attack Vanguard or Rearguard. Even though I don't really know why you would attack Rearguard with its skill, you do have that option available to you. So when it attacks, you can counterboss 1 and retire 2 Rearguards, and then you draw a card, and then your opponent chooses one of their Rearguards, retires it, and this unit gets plus 10,000 power until the end of the turn. The second ability is when your Rearguard is retired, if a grade 3 card with Blaster in its card name is in your soul, this unit gets plus 1 critical until the end of the turn. So reasons why I like and do not like this card. Like I said, it does give you the option to attack Vanguard or Rearguard. You can attack Rearguard if you are trying to deny your opponent damage, but also if you have to ride Gust Blaster first, attacking their Rearguard can be a viable option. Because you don't yet have a Blaster in your soul for the secondary ability, so you're not getting all the extra criticals and stuff like that for you to be able to do shenanigans and a bunch of damage to your opponent. However, on the same part of the first skill, I don't like that your opponent gets to choose which one of their Rearguards they want to retire. I think that, especially since it only retires 1, that you should get to choose as the player what your opponent retires. I think that would just be a lot better. And then the 10,000 power is kind of like meh. The secondary ability is pretty good. I wish that it had Guard Restrict, honestly, because that would make this card like a true threat on the same turns as like Waterfall and other cards like that. But it doesn't have Guard Restrict, so if you have a PG or you're playing Protect, like, you're literally just good against this card. You don't ever care about this card, in my opinion. Also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that if you're playing OTT, when it says your opponent chooses one of their Rearguards and retires it, I think you can still choose Promise Daughter, the grade 2 that can't be retired. I think you can still choose it, and then the skill would just fizzle because you can't retire it from Promise Daughter's skill. So I think that's another reason why it's just like bad for the Shadow player to not be able to choose what they're retiring. Moving on to our second grade 3 in the deck, we have 4 PBD Phantom Blaster Dragon. This card is solid card, especially against Excel. It's like my favorite card against Excel decks, honestly, because it just puts them in such a crappy situation. And honestly, it does them a damage with the second skill, and it puts in a lot of work. So let's talk about it. Already know what this card does if you've been playing, because this card did come out in the previous set where Shadow Paladins came out, the AL4 set. So its two abilities are both at Vanguard abilities, which means they can be activated during the main phase at your leisure. So the first one is Counterblast 1 and retire 3 of your rear guards, and your opponent chooses 3 of their rear guards and retires them, and then this unit gets plus 15k and a critical. So something to be noted about this skill is that you can use it more than once. If your opponent has 6 rear guards on the board and they're playing Excel, you can literally just retire 6 of your rear guards to retire 6 of theirs, and then this card gets 30k and 2 critical. So it's swinging for 3 crit at least 43k if you don't have a force marker on the Vanguard circle. If you do, then it's 53k, and the Excel player has to guard that, and hopefully they have a PG, because if not, they're going to be dying or very close to death, and they just lost all their rear guards. So having them guard with a lot of cards from their hand while they're also trying to replenish the rear guards that they lost is really, really bad for the Excel players. So that's why I really like PBD against Excel. The secondary ability is act once per turn. If your opponent has no rear guards and has 4 or less cards in their damage zone, you can Soul Blast 1 grade 3 and deal 1 damage to your opponent's Vanguard. So it's actually better to reride Phantom Blaster over Phantom Blaster when you're fighting Excel, because I just think that Gust Blaster doesn't do much against Excel. Like, it does a lot less definitely than PBD does. If you're an Excel player, you're definitely a lot more scared of PBD than you are of Gust Blaster, and that's just my personal opinion, because this card retires 1 and gets 10k, and then this card can retire like 6 and get 30k and 2 crit easy. So yeah, something to definitely be wary of. Moving on to our grade 2s, we have 4 Blaster Dark. Blaster Dark is another card that we already had, so you guys should know what it does, but it has 2 Vanguard abilities. 1 can be used on rear guard as well. The first ability is Vanguard rear guard skill. When placed, Counterblast 1. Your opponent chooses 1 of their rear guards and retires it, which is a completely fine skill. And then the second one can only be used on Vanguard circle. If your opponent has no rear guards, you can discard a card from your hand during your main phase, and then when you go into your battle phase and attack with this card, it will get +1 drive until the end of the turn. So that's pretty cool. Really discourages your opponent from playing rear guards early, which means that you're able to rush them, which has always been like a plus for the Shadow Paladin standard deck. If your opponent does play cards, you can get rid of them with Blaster Dark. I think the most that your opponent will play on like turn 1 is like 0, 1, or 2 rear guards, and if they play 2 rear guards, most likely they're doing you at least 2 damage, and then if you have 2 Blaster Darks, you can just play double Blaster Dark and double Counter Blast to retire them, then discard for the twin drive. So usually that puts you in an advantageous state by turn 2, so that's really, really solid as well. Then you have 4 Darkness Maiden Maka. This card was also out from the AL4 set. So it is Vanguard rear guard at once per turn. Counterblast 1 and choose a grade 1 or less card from your hand and call it to rear guard circle. Then you draw a card, and this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So another card to use when you don't get Blaster Dark during turn 2. And otherwise than that, it's just a really, really good beat stick on the rear guard circle after it uses its ability. Also in combination with Black Sage Marin, or Sharon, I should say. Sorry, this is not Royal Paladin. I said Marin. But her twin, I guess, Black Sage Sharon. It's like the combination of those two has always been really, really good. But Sharon says when it's placed due to the ability of your card, you Soul Blast 1, you countercharge 1, and then this unit gets plus 3,000 power. So really, the only things that you lost is you drew a card for free because you didn't pay a counter blast, and then you Soul Blast. So basically just like a Soul Blast to draw a card and have your column gain 8k if you're placing in the same column. So really, really good and definitely worth the Soul Blast. Then finishing out our grade 2 lineup, we have 2 of the new grade 2 Dark Bond Trumpeter. I like and dislike this card, which is why I'm running it at 2. I don't think it's useful enough to be running at 4. It just seems like very like meh. But its Vanguard Rearguard skill is when something to mention also before I go into the skill is that all of our grade 2s have Vanguard Rearguard skills that are Counterblast 1. So you should probably always take the first damage from your opponent, never block their Vanguard, if you want to be able to use your skills, that is. But also they all have really, really good Vanguard Rearguard skills, so they can be used as well at your leisure. So Vanguard Rearguard, when placed, counterboss 1, search your deck for up to one 5,000 power 5,000 card, and then call it to rest, or call it as rest to Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. And then this Vanguard Rearguard ability, again, is when your Rearguard with 5,000 power is placed, then this unit gets plus 3,000 power. Honestly, I wish that this was like plus 5,000 power so that it could hit other force decks like by itself. But I guess that would be too good. I don't know. The plus 3 definitely gives it a good like advantage against like Excel and Protect, because it is able to hit 12 by itself. And then you can play stuff like, you know, Blackwing Swordbreaker can be a 10k booster. Sharon can be an 11k booster if you play it using the skill, etc. And yep, that's just about it with that card. Also 9k plus 8k naturally makes like 17, which is good numbers on Protect and Excel as well. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Black Sage Sharon. I already went over that card, and it's synergy with Maka, so very, very good. Then we have 4 Blackwing Swordbreaker, the V series one. So Blackwing Swordbreaker, for those of you who played in G format or like the old format, which is now premium, you guys know that the old Blackwing Swordbreaker was really a staple in the deck and has kind of come back as a really good card for standard as well. I don't know about the applications for this card for premium. I don't think it's that great in premium, but it is definitely really, really solid in standard. Its Rearguard ability is when it's placed, you can counterboss 1, draw a card, and if this card was placed from your hand, then this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So that's a reason that it wouldn't really be that great in premium, because you have other ways to, this would get played in Luard basically, and you have other better ways to call out grade 1s that will draw you a card or gets you some kind of extra advantage that's not that. But in this deck, you get to actually go search your deck with Darkbong Trumpeter and Nemain to get Blackwing Swordbreaker, and then you can just draw a free card, and it's a free card to your board that can later be retired for Phantom Blaster Dragon or Gust Blaster Dragon. Moving on, we have 4 Skull Witch Domain, always been a staple of the Shadow Paladin standard deck ever since it came out in AL4. So the Act, it has an Act Rearguard skill that the cost is resting this unit, which is basically free. Rest this unit and search your deck for up to 1 card with 5,000 power. Call it to an open Rearguard Circle, and then shuffle your deck. And then this ability can only be used up to 1 time each turn, even with cards with the same name. So what that means is that if you have 2 Skull Witch Domains on the field, if you use one, you cannot use the second one's ability, because you've already used the first one's ability in that turn. But the next turn, you can use 1 Skull Witch Domain again. Moving on to 3 more of our new cards, we have, I decided to, now this is kind of like an open slot. In my opinion, you can run like 3 of any grade 1, or you can increase the grade 3 count, add some Bob the cards, add some grade 2s, do whatever you want. But I decided to use this this open space of 3 for Apocalypse Bat. So Apocalypse Bat has 2 abilities. The first one is when it's placed on Vanguard Circle, you can call a card from your soul to Rearguard. So it allows you to, when you ride this is your actually preferred ride, because the other grade 1s that you have are better off on Rearguard Circle. So this is like your actual preferred grade 1 ride, because you can call your starter out, which gives you not only, it's basically a +2, because you ride and then you draw a card from your starter, and then you use Apocalypse Bat to call out your starter with like a Forerunner skill, and then that's like a +2. So that's really, really good. If you count riding the Apocalypse as a minus, then it's a +1. But it's still better than just riding your starter and then drawing and not getting anything else. But also the Rearguard ability is when this card is placed, you can call an Apocalypse Bat from your soul to Rearguard. So not only do you get to ride Apocalypse Bat and call your starter, but later when you get another Apocalypse Bat, you can get that Apocalypse Bat, play it, and then call out Apocalypse Bat from your soul, which gives you just more and more retire fodder, which is really, really good. Moving on to our grade 0s, we have 1 Full Bell, our starter that draws us a card. Pretty typical for standard, pretty standard for standard. And then we have 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal, 4 Dark Side Trumpeter, 4 Death Feather Eagle, 4 MacLear, our Sentinel trigger, and then 4 Abyss Healer, which is our heal, of course. We're going to be getting right into the games here, so I can show you guys the kind of interactions that the deck has with other decks. If I remember correctly, we did get a good amount of games against like each type of deck, so I can show you guys how it interacts. I think we got 1 Force, 1 Protect, and 1 Excel, but I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that because it's been a while since I recorded these. So loading up Shadow Paladin 1, we're playing against Great Nature for our first game, which is Excel. So we already have a really good matchup against this, as long as we have PBD, which we do have in our hand already. So we decide to go all out, playing cards early. Our opponent does hit a draw trigger, which is pretty sucky for us, honestly. But we do get Twin Drive and we don't hit a trigger. So, but our opponent rides a 9K and doesn't hit a trigger either. We ride PBD, giving a force to Vanguard Circle. We play Apocalypse Bat with Maka skill to get us a little deeper into our deck. We attack for 30 to our opponent's Vanguard. And my opponent said no guard. I do crit to Vanguard, power to rear guard. My opponent hits a front trigger, and then I attack, and then he guards. He rides Leopold as his first ride. He doesn't really get anything off of Leopold's skill except for triggers. So his Vanguard is 3 crit with the crit that he just checked as well. So we do hit a draw trigger, which is cool. Helps us defend against some of those pesky attacks. But then we use PBD's skill to make him retire 3. So that's really cool. And we also reroad PBD. So we are able to use PBD's skill to shoot him for a damage. He takes the damage and it is a heal trigger. Fortunately for us, he doesn't heal, but unfortunately for us, he gets the power, so it's easier for him to guard. So he guards, and then he just takes our rear guard attack. He rides Leopold again, getting 2, and then he mills another one, getting nothing. So he attacks with Binocular. Binocular doesn't hit even after the skill because he mills a normal unit, so he just draws a card. And then he attacks with his rear guard. We take it, and then we guard his 1 rear guard, and one of his rear guards can't hit us. So we decided to re-ride Gust Blaster purely because I realized that I wouldn't be able to use PBD twice. Otherwise, I would have re-rode PBD again. But we attack his Vanguard for 28. And he guards with cards from his hand. We attack him for 40 with 3 critical. And he does PG that, and then we attack him with his rear guard, and then he decides to play the last card from his hand. He tries to use the Monoculus Tiger skill, and then he already used the skill, but after I told him that he couldn't use it on Vanguard, he switched them and then reversed the skill, even though he can't really do that, but I just let it go because the game was about to end anyways. So I basically just called 2 cards, and then I attack him for 27. He guards, and then I attack him with Gust Blaster for 3 crit. He can't guard it, so he is indefinitely super dead, and he takes 3 damage. So that ends up being game 1 right there. Loading up our card fight area again for game 2. There we go. So loading up Shadow Paladin 2 for game 2. Game 2, we're also playing against another Excel deck. We're playing against Gold Paladin. So I was wrong when I said that we were going to be playing against a 4-6 protecting the Excel. But our opponent actually rides a draw trigger because he does have a grade 1 in his hand. And then he actually G-assist and whiffs his G-assist. So I wonder what his ratios are, because that seems really, really unlikely. But I will not say that's impossible, because it has happened to me before, especially in Standard. But we discard a card. We do Twin Drive for Blaster Dart. He does check a heal, healing a damage, and then we attack with Maka. He attacks our rear guard, doesn't hit a trigger, so our Maka stays because he needed 1 trigger to pass. And then we use the main to call a card. We get a heal trigger, putting it to the main, and then we check a Gust Blaster. He does check a draw trigger, avoiding our attack. And then he decides to ride Wonder Ezel. He uses the skill to kind of boss Soul Blast, look at top 3 cards. And yes, he gets another Wonder Ezel using the skill to call Dendrain. And then he calls the freaking Howl from his hand, allowing him to get to Blonde Ezel and then Ravenhair, which is honestly really good for us, in my opinion, because he's basically, the thing about Gold Paladins is they make themselves go down in hand advantage so that they can do this combo, which is usually fine, but not against Shadows, because I can basically get rid of their entire board for nearly free to me. So it's not a big deal. But we do take 4 damage, which kind of sucks, but we are able to re-ride into PBD. We use the skill of Swordbreaker to draw a card, then we retire 3. And then we play Maka using Maka's skill to call Apocalypse Bat. and then we call Blaster Dart. We use PBD's skill again to get rid of 3. He retires 3 as well. And unfortunately for us, he has a PG, which I didn't know about, but we did shoot him for damage. He unfortunately checked a trigger, and then he unfortunately had a PG again, just like our last opponent. So we do attack him with rear guard, but this does severely limit him at the same time because he's down to like 4 cards in hand and not as many rear guards to attack us with. So he attacks us for 12 because he Soul Blasts out the Ezel. For whatever reason he did that, I don't know. And then it goes over to us. We play Gust Blaster. Unfortunately, he does have another PG in his hand. And I guess this deck, that's what this deck really comes down to, which is why I don't like it. It comes down to whether your opponent has a PG in their hand or not. If they don't, amazing. But if they do, then your turn is kind of like bleh. Especially because it just takes so much counterblast and stuff to just keep up. But my opponent re-rides, uses Vivian, calls a Wonder Ezel, and then just attacks for 12. I 2 to pass it. He gets a heal trigger and doesn't get another trigger, so we're safe there. And then he attacks us. We guard with some cards. We re-ride into Gust Blaster, and we use our main to call out a draw trigger because we want to check a crit. However, when we attack with Vanguard, we do not check a crit, which is unfortunate. And then we attack for 15. He re-rides into Sagamore and plays down all the remaining cards from his hand. And I think we figured here that we had to 1-pass him to survive, so we intercept for a 1-to-pass. He doesn't get it. We let him take our rear guard, and then we guard the rest with all the cards in our hand. And we just played 2 cards, the rear guard circle. We used the main, and I saw that there was just crits in there, so I decided to just like keep them in there just so that I could check a crit. And that ends up being the game that we win from our opponent. Loading up game 3 here. There we go. Alright, loading up Shadow Paladin 3. Alright, so we're playing against Gold Paladin again for game 3. I believe this is the same player, if I'm not mistaken. He probably wanted a rematch because his first game was super crappy. But we do start really decent, so we were able to use Maka into Sharon, then the main into Blackwing Swordbreaker. So we do get quite a bit of advantage off of our turn 2. Our opponent attacks us for 12, then 9 to our rear guard, checks a crit, and then we guard the crit attack. We ride PBD, we make him retire 2 of his cards, and then we just attack him. We get a crit, so he takes 3 damage. Because he was going to PG, but then he decided that he didn't want to. And then he was just like, yeah, I scoop. Because I guess he didn't want to deal with riding Ravenhair and then going from there. Next turn after that, I probably would have re-rode, depending on what he did, I probably would have re-rode Gust Blaster or Phantom Blaster and played a Gust Blaster or a Phantom Blaster on Rearguard Circle. Or played a Gust Blaster on Rearguard Circle regardless, just to start going in on him. But I guess my opponent didn't want to deal with it, and they just scooped. So we did play against 3 Excel matchups, so that is the best matchup for the deck. But that has been the Future Fight for the Shadow Paladin deck from Violet's Deleter. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck build and the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up on the video. Really helps a lot more than you guys think. Comment down below letting me know what you thought of the deck, or what are some builds that you're trying out, or cards that you like or dislike for this deck as well. But also be sure to subscribe so that you don't have to miss any of our future content going forward. Check out our sponsor down below, Dabbers, in the description, and check out my second channel, Let's Plays Animes, Opie. But with that being said, it's been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.